Hello and welcome to the Behind the Bricks podcast. So, as always, my name is Chris. We've got a guest this week who is Derek Pratt from Sourced Capital. Hello, Del. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
And we're going to take a slightly different angle on this podcast. Despite this little page of notes that I've made, we're actually just going to have a chat. It's been a week since the budget, nearly a week since the budget. And so we're going to look at the impact that it's actually had on the property investment market, on investors themselves, what we've heard, and then we're going to predict. That's a dangerous word, isn't it? We're going to have a look at what could possibly happen over in 2026. So thanks for joining us, Del.
Good to be here, mate.
Tell us a little bit about you, because why are you the right person to come in and talk to us about this?
I'm not. That's a terrible idea.
Is it because this is a really heavy subject and you do nothing but make jokes to keep it light?
No, you know what? It is a bit heavy, but it does impact everyone, mate, doesn't it? So if we can sort of get to the main nuts and bolts of what's come out of this budget, then hopefully that helps someone.
And you're the right person to help us pick through all of that noise to get to the nuts and bolts. I've seen your emails. I've seen how long your emails could be. Are you sure that you're the right person?
Apparently there's no time constraints on this. Well, I'll do my best. Hopefully we can keep it factual, keep it to the point.
Wow, okay. Well, I'm going to hold you to that. Let's see how it goes.
No.
All right, so let's start off with like just a general overview. It's nearly been a week since the budget. Overall, do you think there's been any knee-jerk reaction or change in the market?
I think the opposite, to be honest. I think it's calmed things down. Largely because there was so much scaremongering before the budget that there was quite a lot of concern as to what might happen. And I think what has happened is fairly level. And from an economic point of view, I mean, I'm sure we can talk about the politics if you really wanted to, but from a purely economic point of view,
keep it light.
Yeah, from a purely numbers perspective, I think the fact that all the talk afterwards is mainly political probably tells you that the numbers were solid and the markets have reacted pretty well to it.
So I was talking to one of our franchisees the other day, and they were looking at a property that was on the market for like 200,000 or something like that, and they worked out that to make the deal work, they were going to have to buy it for about 160. And so I said, whatever you do, don't go in at 160. Go in at 145. Try and reset what they're thinking about as the purchase price of that property, and then negotiate until you get to 160. So go in pessimistic or reset them, reframe it so they're pessimistic, and then give them good news that actually it's not going to be 145, it's going to be 160. So effectively what you think is that Labour have done exactly the same thing, and they've spread news that it's going to be a bad one, and then they've come out and it's not being quite as bad, and therefore everyone's reframed and reset and thinking, oh, could have been worse, instead of thinking, oh, it's just got worse.
Without a doubt, I think what's been trailed in the last 6 months, how many people, property investors particularly, were sat there thinking, national insurance is coming. National insurance is coming on investment income. It hasn't. Well, that's good news. Not so good. There's an extra 2% just cropped up on your income and your dividends. But would national insurance have been worse? Yeah, possibly. But I think that goes across so much of what the budget was. And ultimately, she's had more money to play with than anyone ever let on, which has meant that
it's been a bit of a softer impact.
Yeah.
So what do you reckon then? Do you think this is just like the first step of their grander plan over a longer period of time, where they introduce these things and then they ramp them up? So the 2% increase, for example, they've separated property investment and income from property investment away from normal income tax. And now they've made it 2%, but then that creates the mechanism to then increase that on its own in the future and leave normal income tax where it is. Do you think that's what they're doing? They're sort of setting up now the mechanisms to then increase it and scale it in the future.
Yeah, I think it's a very clever technique. I think, although it started before this budget, look what they've done already with mortgage interest relief. That's there now, isn't it? No one's even talking about it.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that what's actually going to happen in this budget means that squeeze on income is now going to be compounded.
Do you know, just a point to test your knowledge, the mortgage interest relief, which section was that? Can you remember that one?
That 24.
Oh, Well done.
You're welcome.
Good
It's almost like we talked about it earlier.
Just trying to make you look good. You're doing a good job yourself, to be fair.
Thanks, pal. Give us time.
So what have they changed in this budget? What are the things that they've introduced? We talked about the 2%, but that's not the only thing that they've changed. So what else have they brought in?
Do you want this from a broad view or for totally just purely property perspective?
Yeah, just property perspective, please.
Okay. So I think the big part of what overarches everything here is the government's ambition and stated ambition to sort of level up the tax they get off income versus, from people working rather than passive income that's being generated from assets. And that's a stated objective, and it gives them quite a lot of leeway to do a lot of things they've done regarding property. So income.
Can I ask you a question? Is that a good time to ask you a question, or do you want to finish that first?
No, you just interrupt whenever you want.
Thank you. So therefore, I guess the next thing that you're going to talk about is the mansion tax.
That's part of it.
Right. So how does the mansion tax therefore make sense? Apart from purely taxing people that have got more expensive houses, right? But they are working people who might not really be investing a lot of their money. That might be their only asset. That is probably going to be their family home. So where's the logic from Labour to tax that over, let's take a normal sort of property strategy that is specifically taking houses out of the stock of serviced accommodation, Airbnb rentals? Where's the logic to go down somebody's family home rather than go down a clear investment asset?
Personally, I think it's just an easy hit. Is anyone crying that someone who's sat in a £5 million house is having to pay an extra £7,500 a year?
Everybody else in the £5 million houses.
No one cares. And I think that's the short answer to it. It impacts less than 1% of all property stock.
Does it? I didn't know that.
About 3% in London, I believe. But again, if you think about all the...
Sorry.
So what's in the budget that they've done to help the sort of left side of those to the left in Labour, all about the good news about sort of getting children out of benefit, out of poverty by changing the benefit rules. That's an absolute crowd please. Of course it is, and anyone in the country is going to struggle to say that's a bad idea. But what else have they done? It's all leading to the left. It's all helping. The lower incomes, it's aimed down there. The fact that someone sat in a £5 million house and it's 1% of the country and it's $7,500, I just think it's quite a soft land, and it's an easy way of bringing in I get only generates 0.4 billion, but when you say only, it's still 0.4 billion, isn't it? That's why I think they've done it. It's an easy hit.
So if you remember when the Conservatives was still in power, when they did their last budget, they were going after property as well. They were going to tax property more so, but the route that they went down was to go down this Airbnb service accommodation route, where they were making it more difficult for people to get into that space, and it looked like it was going to have its own use class, and it was going to be taxed differently. So why do you think it's purely a political thing where Labour have gone, well, they did that, and it might be a good idea because an Airbnb rental, that isn't a family home. That's taken out from the normal stock, and that's purely for investment. So that's creating a problem with the housing shortage that we have. So do you think that that is a political game that they've played, where they've just gone, we'll leave that to them, this is our plan, and we're going to go and do our plan over here, even if it is attacking somebody's family home rather than a pure investment asset?
Well, that would suggest that they haven't also attacked the investment asset, because I think they have. And there's going to be a trickle-down effect across the whole market. But there's other things in there regarding what's going to be taxable if you've got your Airbnb, your short-term let. There's a lot of things to think about there. There's little sneaky things that might not be headlines, but the fact that now local mayors can charge a levy on every night that someone's in short-term accommodation. That's seriously going to impact people's net income.
And is that down to their discretion as to what that local levy is charged at, the rate it is charged?
Yeah, mayors have got the option to do what they want to do, whether they even want to do anything.
And that actually goes out to mayors, does it?
Is it 7 metro mayors or the whatever the correct terminology is that's gone out to them? But for the your likes of your Manchesters, your Liverpools in this part of the world, absolutely. Why wouldn't they not charge it? I think they will.
I mean, that answers one of the questions of what it is that mayors actually do and why people want to be mayors. Because what else? I mean, when you go to Europe, for example, it's a big part of their community. It's a big part of their town or their village or whatever. But over here, it's a system that seems to be very outdated.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be a mayor of Warrington or your mayor of Blackburn. I think it's more you.
Does somebody want to be the mayor of Blackburn? Sorry to anybody in Blackburn.
Someone is the mayor of Blackburn. Bling. That's why you.
Yeah.
Lovely chain.
Good
nice car. It's. But that will impact things, won't it? Why would they not put an extra cost on that's going to come straight to them? Straight into your local government. It's got to happen, isn't it?
So again, with this mansion tax that they've added, it starts at 2 million, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then it's when you get over to 5 million, there's another threshold, and that goes up.
And there's one in between as well, but
yeah. But do you then see them? That's the introduction, and it's introduced up here where it's less than 1% of the people that are being affected by it, and then next budget or in a couple of years' time when everyone's sort of forgotten about it and just accepted it, like the Section 24 thing, it's not going to start at 2 million, it's going to start at 1 million. Then it's going to start at 500,000, because that was the information that we got beforehand.
Absolutely.
That it was going to start at 500 grand, wasn't it?
And that was, I think we'll circle back to what we said earlier, isn't it? All the concerns that were in place before the budget, and you're absolutely right, that was a big one. And that's impacting people's choices on whether you were buying, whether you weren't buying, what price you wanted to pay. Like now, who's going to pay 2 million quid for a property? No one. There's nothing going to sell for 2 million pounds, is there? It's going to go for, £5 under that.
Yeah.
Or, noticeably under that, depending on how they're going to do future valuations. And
so what happens to that person that bought a property for, say, 2.1 or just over the 2 million threshold, and now they want to sell it, but they want to continue the value of their property going up? What are their choices? Are there creative ways that you can take the money for the asset without it being reflected on the purchase price? You just can't do that, can you?
No, but
so what are they going to?
That's a bigger question. How much is the house worth? If the house is worth north of 2.1, or you want to pay 2.1, and that's what they want to get for it, and you think this is the house of all houses, and it's only going to increase in value, and it's in the right location, and it might be close to, I don't know. The government have announced something in this budget. It does have good news and bad news in it. They are spending money. That's the other part of what the government.
Yeah, but if you're going through the process of buying a £2.1 million house, all you're seeing is that
that
ongoing tax that you're going to get every single year.
Yeah.
And if it was an individual charge, it would be easier to sort of come up with some kind of way of negotiating that individual charge to help the person pay it, or to soften that blow. But because it's a charge every single year.
Oh, don't get me wrong, mate. Would I want to be paid 2.1 million quid? No. I'd be £5 under it. That'd be my bid, and that would be it if I think it's worth 2.1. But, what's the adage on every single property that's ever been sold? It should be, what's it worth? And what's it worth to you? And what are you going to do with it? And, is £2,500 quid a year on a £2.1 million property worth not buying it? Because it's just a surcharge on the tax that everyone else is already paying anyway, isn't it? I mean, I think the point in the budget was the fact that you can live in the most desirable part of London and pay less on your council tax than you're paying on a bandy in Blackpool. That doesn't sound right. So the fact that you've got to pay another £2,500 on top of it to maybe live in Mayfair, well, all right, yeah, your council tax is a bit higher. I think that comes with the territory, doesn't it?
Did anybody check that out? Was that accurate?
I didn't check that out. But
where's your preparation for this podcast?
It wouldn't. the information was leaked well in advance of the budget, so I presume someone's checked it.
Yeah, I double checked it and gone back to check it.
And I thought the OBR have had a look at it while he was still in the job.
That's unbelievable if that's true. I'm going to go and have a look at that afterwards.
Well, we're sat here in Warrington, and it's only this week that Warrington said they're going to have to put out emergency measures because the council have no money. So, yeah, I would imagine that the council tax sat in Warrington, bad news for you, Chris, is going to be huge compared to what a very sort of well-off and well-run council with not many drags on its public purse is, is able to charge.
Badly invested, wasn't it? I think Warrington Council. I think that's what they did with their money.
They've got a shocking past.
Yeah.
But they are still alive and can still see.
They should have put more.
So will we go for what we say?
They should have put more in property. There's some great opportunities in Warrington. They need to look at it, really.
Oh, there's some great opportunities across the country, and I'm sure we'll come to that.
Yeah. So they're the two big headlines, aren't they? The mansion tax and the 2% increase on property income tax.
Yeah, absolutely without doubt. From a property point of view, the mansion tax, yeah. Who does it affect? Not a lot.
1% of people.
Directly. As I say, I think there will be a trickle-down effect, as any chain in any property sale does. It does impact everyone at every point. So, but I still don't think that's going to impact the market other than the fact that does something sell for 2.05 or 1.99. They won't be ready to sell it bang on 5 million.
But ultimately, that choice is one of the surveyor anyway. It's not up to the two people that are purchasing the property or the purchasing and selling.
Yeah, I don't know how many 95% mortgages are proceeding on the £5 million house, but but yeah, of course it is. It's valuation, isn't it? And it's someone's viewpoint on that value and the fact that they've got to pay a surcharge to live in a fantastic house, which would typically mean it's in a very good area. I don't think many people are shedding many tears over it. I think the bigger issue that's going to impact more people, particularly around property investment, is going to be the squeeze on costs and the extra tax that you're going to have to pay. Because it's not if, you will have to pay extra if you want to get some money out of it and you are making a profit. I think the debate as to whether, if you're a property investor, you're doing that through a limited company or as a private individual has probably just become less of an open debate as far as which is most advantageous from a tax point of view. But as we can talk about, there are bigger considerations than just an extra 2% tax as to how you be in a private.
But still, 2% is going to make a difference, right? With everything else added up and all those costs added up, it's going to make a difference. And what you're talking about there is the amount of tax that is charged if you hold a company in a limited company as an SPV, which will stay at corporation tax rates.
Absolutely.
Or if you hold it as a private individual, then you'll be taxed at the elevated income tax of property. So it's the extra 2% on top of it.
Yeah, so 22, 42 or 47, depending on where you are.
Whereas corporation tax currently sits at 20%.
Up to 25.
Up to 25. Can we unpack that? Can we talk about that a little bit more?
Not really.
No? Okay. No, that's fine.
Well, we can push you on. But the other side of it's not a slam dunk, because if you are a limited company, effectively you're paying tax twice, because you're going to pay tax at corporation tax rates.
And then if you take it out and then bring it into your own spending,
you're paying tax on that. And this budget is now putting an extra 2% on your dividend draw.
Yeah.
So you're still going to have to pay that extra 2%. It's just that you'll be paying it, one would expect, on a lower figure because of all the expenses you've been able to offset in your limited company.
And also your dividend draw is lower than income tax anyway.
Yeah.
Right? But also, that is true if you're trying to put it into your wallet to then spend it. But if your plan is to scale your portfolio and you're going to keep it within that limited company or parent company structure, whatever you're going for, then you won't have to take it out, and therefore you won't have to pay that additional layer of tax.
Absolutely. So it's again, there isn't one solution for everyone, but
Yeah.
across the board, there won't be many people looking at it and thinking it's, the tax win is to keep it in my own name. That isn't. It's just the costs of taking things out your own name and putting them in a limited company if you're already an established private landlord.
So overall, before we get on to Pratty's predictions, which is where we're going to end up, what is your feeling from this budget? Do you think it's still possible to make money out of property? Do you think it's still an investment class that's worth looking at? What is your sort of takeaway from what's happened and the feedback that you've heard from other property investors over the last week since the budget came out?
Yeah, and I think it's the great question still. It was before the budget, and I think it will be going forward. But my view on it is it's nowhere near as bad as anyone thought, and there's nothing in this that stops property investment being a worthwhile asset. Nothing whatsoever. Let's look at some of the impact that's going to come out of this. And I know you said we'll come back to where do I think things are going to go, but I think it's an unavoidable truth that what this budget does is going to mean rents are going to increase. Yeah, rents are going to increase. They're going to increase across the board, and there's still a higher demand for property from renters than there is supply. Add that into the fact that there's now a motivation to increase those rents because people's net income's just reduced. And I don't see how we don't get that increase in rent. So you get an increase in rent, add into the fact that interest rates are going to drop, and yes, we've got that issue about Section 24, but lower interest rates mean it's better if you're the owner. Higher income, take some of the costs out. If it still works now, it can only work better going forward.
Do you see any kind of mix in the type of person that is a property investor? Do you see, because you hear a lot and you heard before the budget that a lot of landlords are going to be leaving the market in droves, right? But then the budget's come out and there's really not been that much of a reaction to the budget because it's not as significant as we thought it was, exactly like you say. And so do you think those individual landlords are still going to sell up and leave, but then that leaves the opportunity for the guys that have maybe got 5 to 10 houses that want to grow their portfolio because they can snap it up because they've got a bit of liquidity, where the guys that have got like maybe accidental landlords and they only own one, their margins have been squeezed too much, but the other guys can mop it up, and so actually landlords and the landlord community becomes fewer people owning bigger portfolios? Or do you think there's still the opportunity for like the single unit owning entrepreneur?
I think people can differ. A lot of parts to that question.
Sorry.
But who do I think will come out the market, or who does it make sense to come out of the market? If I was a landlord in my own name with a small portfolio and my yield was fairly insignificant, I would consider getting out because the capital gains tax hasn't gone up. All right, they've maintained the threshold where it was. So at some future point, if property increases, I'm going to be paying more capital gains. And I'm going to be paying more tax out of what I'm earning, despite the fact, actually, my net income, because my yield is low, my net income isn't great. Why wouldn't you realise your asset now and actually sort of get your money out of it? That I can see the attraction to that kind of landlord.
Yeah.
But if I was coming into the market and I know I was buying a property in the right location, where the yield is right, where there's rental demand, I'll put it in a limited company because that would suit my tax position. Our sweep all is always, take professional advice and make sure that what's right for you individually is well advised to you. But why wouldn't you come into it? There's money to be made. You can still make money, without a doubt. Yes, people are looking at your income, but pay an extra 2%, interest rates come down, 0.5%. I think the other thing we've got to look at as well is if you're a landlord that is paying the utility bills in that property, this budget's just been quite good for you because the costs of those utilities are going to be coming down. So your interest rates coming down, your costs are coming down as far as your utility bills, and your income's coming up. Yeah, there's a bit of tax, but I would urge people not to get carried away by 2%.
Yeah.
If you've got to pay more because you earn more, that's probably,
Fairish.
it's not a bad position, is it? It's where you've got to pay more and you earn less. It's, that's clearly the time to be looking at your own circumstances.
So do you think there are going to be fewer accidental landlords then, because those margins are tighter? So you need to make sure, like you said, it's in the right place, it's got the right demand, it's priced correctly, it's set up to meet the tenant type that is in that location. You're probably going to be able to answer yes to all of those questions fewer times if you bought the property to live in for a bit and now you're moving out because you're moving in with somebody. The typical kind of accidental landlord life kind of way of buying a property. Whereas if you're going out there because you want to buy something specifically to create a portfolio, you're going to make sure that all the numbers are there.
Accidental landlord versus professional landlord is the way to do it, isn't it? If you know what your strategy is and you've actually given thought to that strategy, someone's overviewed it, told you that that's the right way to go, pretty much what your individual circumstances are, you get the right balance between, are you looking for asset growth, are you looking for income, put it in the right tax wrapper, put it in the right ownership, lit it alongside everything else you've got, be well advised, be knowledgeable. There's no reason whatsoever why you shouldn't be in the market.
Great. So now let's look at the prediction. So this is where you get to be Mystic Meg. First of all, specifically looking at the market in 2026, do you think this budget's going to have a big impact on where the market was heading, and where do you think that direction is?
So are we, from a property price point of view, well, there's some figures just come out from Nationwide, was it yesterday or the day before, showing that the market is still increasing. I think it was only 0.3% in the month, but still just short of 2% or over the year. I think that's probably where the market's going. It's stable. Stable is good. Stable is good. We do have a backdrop where the prices are close to the record highs. We've still got interest rates that are twice where they were, or more than that, pre-COVID, but they're coming down. So there's no great headline to stimulate, that's going to act as a stimulus to the market, or that's going to stimulate house building. None of that's going to change. So we've still got a shortage of stock. House prices are already stable and on the increase. Overall affordability is probably going to be unchanged, really, as you look at net across the piece. I think the market will be stable and slowly increasing.
That's a very definitive answer.
Thanks, mate. There will obviously be
Let's see what
pockets across the country
Here we go.
that will counter that.
Caveat.
Of course there will. Some places are going to go higher, aren't it? Again, if we're talking specifically about the budget, they're committed to spend on some fairly big, projects. If I was buying new, I'd be looking to be somewhere near where there's going to be a huge, spend in those areas, because it should have a positive impact on long-term prices. And if I wanted to rent out, there's going to be demand from contractors and the like.
And secondly, from a government point of view, where do you think the government are going with property? Do you think they're going to introduce different taxes that we haven't seen yet? Do you think they're going to ramp up the taxes that they've already introduced? Or do you think that's them done and they're going to kind of leave the property market alone now?
I think this budget creates quite a significant gap between where they need to be and where they're going to be from a financial point of view. Okay, puts it in a good position, which is why the markets are quite happy that it's introduced some stability into it. Ignore all the politics about did they not tell the truth prior to. I think actually where we are is pretty good. As long as we get some growth out of the wider productivity, the numbers will look okay. So long as we carry on the path that we're on. Yes, they've done some clever stuff, haven't they? They've now got the ability. Once you've got a tax in, you don't take the tax out. It only goes up. So they're there. You've still got the opportunity to increase. That 2%. It could go higher. They could still bring national insurance in if they really needed to on that income, but they haven't. They're looking at other ways of doing it. I don't think we're going to see any dramatic change in the rest of, it's a game, isn't it? They've got now, they've got the rest of this term. The last budget was pretty horrendous from a property point of view and from a business point of view, and the costs went high. This budget is less, headline grabbing with regards to who really gets hurt, and it's sort of stabled the numbers out. I'm not quite apolitical. I'm totally apolitical. I don't particularly like any of them, but I do think this makes sense from a purely numbers point of view, and I don't think that unless the world takes a different turn, they'll do anything dramatically different going forward. And adding into that, because this is quite important, they're only going to measure the fiscal measures once a year going forward rather than twice. So what you won't get is this sort of nonsense of will they, won't they, twice a year. You actually now do get most of the year with some stability in it, which I think will help not only the property market, but the wider country, full stop.
So overall, what's your opinion of whether Rachel Reeves hates property investors?
Rachel Reeves, personally,
yeah.
don't think she hates property investors, but that doesn't mean she won't take advantage of them. I think Rachel Reeves wants, as clearly stated, to avoid people with passive income having an easy ride on the tax point of view. And from a political leaning, I think it works for her within her party that she's seen to be taking action against people who are asset rich and arguably bringing income in that doesn't add to the productivity of the country.
Mm-hmm.
That was politically balanced, wasn't it?
It was very good.
But does she hate them? No. Does she need them? Yes. The country needs housing, full stop. Do I think you're going to see a million, all landlords leave the market? No. Do I think you'll see new landlords come in? Yes. But people need to understand the pros and cons that come out of this as how they impact them personally.
The media is funny, isn't it? Because as soon as, when Labour were spreading their message about what the budget could be before the budget, they were all over it because it was potentially doom and gloom, because they were trying to spread that it could be really bad message, right? It could hit everybody. It could have a big impact on most people's lives, and the media were all over it. But since the budget, and the perspective that you've just shared with us is that it's not too bad. It's all right. Makes sense. Let's crack on, shall we? Kind of perspective. The media have absolutely disappeared, and you really don't get many comments or many articles to kind of support that, because it doesn't just make sense. It is just okay. I can't remember where I was going to go with that, but I did have a point that I was going to make.
Well, I think, let's compare this budget. This one does work. The numbers do add up. It's not the great quasi budget, which made no sense. This it adds up, but it does bring in. Are people going to pay more? People have to pay more. This budget's going to raise £26 billion extra income, so it's got to come from somewhere. But it doesn't kill property investors. What is an extra 2%? It's it's £20 on every £1,000 profit. And that's what it's taxed on, profit. It's not going to stop you coming into it, is it? If you were happy making £1,000, but you're not happy making, 980, doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
If we gave you £100,000 to invest in property in 2026 with all the experience that you have in the property investment world, how would you spend that 100 grand?
Okay, it's a lovely dilemma. So let's deal with that. I think my first point would be, against my wider position, which clearly I'm not going to share here, would be whether I wanted capital growth or whether I wanted income. So that would definitely direct me as to how I was going to invest it. If I was going to invest, I need to go back for that, because ideally what I'd probably do is say I'd make full use of my 20-year my ISA allowance. So, yeah, first decision is, do I want capital growth or do I want income?
Yeah.
That's definitely my first decision. There's going to be certain areas where, if I'm pretty comfortable with my income and all I'm looking for is long-term growth, I'm going to be looking at cap. That's where I'm at. Certain areas are always going to be desirable, always going to be, beneficial from a strongest, stable market. They'll outperform, the average, and that's what I'd go into those places. I'd buy that. I'd quite happily, effectively be comfortable to mothball it. Let someone in there cover the bills and take the capital gains.
And that tends to be in a more expensive area because it's already started off with that history of capital growth. So you're going to buy fewer houses at a higher price point and just sit on them.
Yeah, it's a massive generalisation, but lower yields typically represent higher capital growth and typically sort of represent better capital assets. Typically, right? It's a massive sweep all, but yes, that would be your normal expectations. Low yield on a poor quality asset is a terrible buy.
Yeah.
Low yield on a high quality asset is to be expected.
Yeah.
So so that's what I'd do. I'd be location, all about sort of what's the long-term gains, what is the quality of living, and that's what I'd do with that. And I'd leverage up, because that's how you increase your own personal gain. And if I'd leverage in at low interest rates, net result happiness. Okay. Flip side, you're looking for income. At that point, I'm sort of probably looking more towards a higher yielding asset. If I can get that in an area where there's going to be long-term demand, and I can get the quality of tenant that I would want to be putting in there to make sure that I'm not seeing all my not my gains going out the window in ongoing renewals and repairs.
I'm going to ask you for a top tip for 2026, and the answer to those, the location, the geographical location of where you would take that low yielding asset or that high yielding asset could be that top tip if you wanted it to be, but I'll leave that up to you.
But my absolute top tip would be make sure that before you invest that money, you've taken the right professional advice as far as how you've got it structured and where you're getting your debt from and what type of debt you've got into it.
Unpack that a little bit though. So what do you mean by how you've got it structured and who you're taking the professional advice from?
Okay. First question mark is limited company or not limited company. How are you going to set that up? Who are going to be the shareholders? What's your long-term plan with regards to ownership? Who's going to pass that over? Do you actually need, you don't want, if the idea is to keep this in the family, the last thing you want is to have a wrangle when you're not about, or a discussion between shareholders who, it can't make a decision on behalf of the company. There's a lot of, what do I mean by professional advice? I mean, you've got the legal position right and you've got your financial position right, So who's going to advise you? Well, it's going to be an accountant and a solicitor. They're the main people, or you've got a highly competent professional advisor. You've heard me say it many times. If you're going to take advice, it's got to be for someone you can sue.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's not advice, it's just opinion, and everything we're talking about is opinion. You cannot sue us. We're nothing you've heard is advice. And everything is the personal opinion of Derek Pratt and Christopher Kirkwood, and not from source.
A disclaimer right in the middle of the podcast. That is crowbarred. Well done.
Put that in there, But it's true. Why take advice if the person isn't qualified to give it you? So that would be that's my main advice on anything.
That's brilliant, Dale. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks very much for your opinion. And thanks for sharing your thoughts about the budget with us.
No, thanks for inviting us in to talk about such a light and entertaining topic. It's been an absolute pleasure.